you're always making music. It's I've never been around you before. Is this even when there aren't people in your apartment and you're still singing all the time?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely am singing all the time for sure. I'm always making music, but I'm never like in my apartment like going, okay, I need to create this composition. Yeah. Like I never do that. I just kind of fuck around.
Yeah. This is to me like one of the most fascinating things talking to you now. I assume that because you've got all this equipment in your apartment that you're also making music in your apartment, but you're not.
Yeah, I know. It's weird. I mean, on rare occasion, I'll definitely get inspired. You know, I'll sit down and be like, let me try making some beats. You know, they're really easy to make. And but now I have this new piece of equipment, this Electro Harmonix 45,000. It actually has this little add-on controller pedal that allows you to save up to 99 loops. So now I can actually just run down all these different ideas super quickly, and they're all saved. And it's great.
So you're saving loops for stage performances?
No, just to have them. You know, like you know, someday I hope to actually maybe hook up with, I don't know, some MCs or something like that, and like just do an album of me just making beats.
Yeah.
And MCs just going over it or whatever, because they're really easy to make. I mean, you know, it only takes as long as it takes to make it, which is about maybe a couple minutes to make it.
It's done in real time.
Yeah, it's all done in real time.
Yeah.
So they're very easy to make. You just like, here's a 4-bar loop. Okay, cool. Now I'll add this. Oh, that sounds cool. All right, now let's click up and do a new loop, and then I'll just do quickly another one. That's what I do for Comedy Bang Bang for all the interstitial music. I just load up a bunch of really simple loops and then use those for the play-ins and the playoffs for guests.
Yeah, but it's beyond that. It's totally improvised.
Yeah, it's just all improvised. Yeah.
So I mean, why don't you record stuff? I mean, why is everything so ethereal with your work?
Well, I don't know. I have no idea. I think it's because I'm just not very. I don't know. I guess I like to, when I'm not making stuff, I like to just play around and have free time and just have fun. And for me, I had so many years of making music that, you know, like in Seattle or whatever for a long time, just being in bands and playing music, all that stuff. I just couldn't, you know, I don't know. Nowadays, I'm like, well, I make everything on stage, so I'll just wait till I get to stage to make it.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, maybe it's just me, but you know, I feel like if I'm on stage and I do something really great, I kind of want to have that saved for posterity, right?
Oh yeah, that's true. I mean, sometimes they're recorded. Sometimes I'll have someone record it, but most of the time, it doesn't get recorded and it just goes away. Which part of it, I kind of like that to a certain degree. It's not like it's not my default or mandatory, but I do think that it's kind of cool that you can make things, but they may never. They'll never be repeated again. So it's kind of like hearkening back to, you know, more old school style of performance where we don't record everything. We don't preserve everything. It's not preserved infinitely. You know, it's just an experience that's, if you were there, you got to experience it. If you weren't, you weren't.
Does the recording, I mean, does that affect the music at all? The you know, the knowledge that this is going to be saved for at least, if not ever, for a while, if it's on IFC, for example, or you know, live your special that's on Netflix. Do you try a little harder?
No, I just do the same way. I just, you know, try to do my best. I mean, I wouldn't change the quality of what I was doing based on a situation necessarily. I wouldn't be like, well, I'm playing for the Queen of England, I'd better make this really good, as opposed to when I'm just kind of half-assing it the other time. Like I'm always striving to do something great, hopefully.
How did you end up in the comedy community? We were saying earlier that you kind of, at least out here, you started at Rafifi's. So why was that more natural than, you know, trying to play at Mercury Lounge?
I mean, I've always been a big fan of comedy, and it's been really great to, you know, appreciate it, you know, when I was in bands and things like that. But I'd done comedy when I was in high school. I did a lot of comedy in high school and did a couple sketch groups in the mid '90s as well.
We were all in sketch groups in the mid '90s.
That's all everybody was doing was sketch. But yeah, I just kind of got inspired when I saw Stella. I just, I saw that. My friend came back from New York and had the shitty Stella shorts, the ones that they shot, I think, on like, I don't know what they shot it on, like some kind of a mini DV or something like that. Yeah. And they were just kind of shitty looking and like just awesome though, just so weird and abstract and funny. And I was like, that's the shit I love. I love that. I understand what they're doing. And then I thought, wow, these guys are like killing it in New York right now. And I was hearing rumblings of things happening in New York. And so I just went to New York. I had an opportunity to go to New York, and I just went there and started doing basically what I do now. And people were like, yeah, that's cool. All right. You want to come back? Come back. So I came back, and and then one thing led to another.
Do you feel like you'd be able to do this straight, or does there always have to be an element of comedy? Do there have to be jokes in there?
You mean for if I just did music?
Yeah.
When I do my shows, I don't. All the songs aren't necessarily funny. Yeah. Sometimes I'll just do just a straight up song. It all goes in line with my show. I don't ever want to do the same thing twice, and I don't want people to expect and get what they expect all the time. So, I don't really have, and again, like I had 10 or 13 years of playing serious music, and recording, 5 or 6 albums, and like.
What was your most serious song title?
A serious song title. They were all pretty serious, but Jesus.
It was called Jesus.
Yeah, it was called "Oh Jesus, Help Me." You're the only one. No, I think it was, I don't know, something like "Subtle Ways." Was the name of a song?
That's pretty. Yeah.
It's fairly.
It's pretty serious.
Yeah, Prognostication. No, there was no song called Prognostication. It's just be a gross song title. This one's called Prognostication 1, 2, 3. It's in 17.
When you talk about trying to do something different every time, as we were discussing earlier, you're still sticking to the same equipment. It seems like you're kind of set in your current setup right now. Is there? Does that limit you at all?
No. No. There's like tons of things that I'm not getting to do when I perform live. I can only do
because
there's not enough time, or it'd be too boring for the audience to watch me. Spend too much time building something, so it has to be relatively quick. So I usually, when I perform live, it's usually kind of a rudimentary version of what I can do musically. It becomes a little bit more complex when I'm improvising over it freely. Then I can go wherever I want to go. But setting up what the base of a song is generally relatively rudimentary.
Yeah, you took us through the steps, and it sounds like, I don't want to use the word formula, but it sounds like you've definitely got something in place, right?
Yeah, completely. I mean, I usually start with a rhythm or something, and then I add a bass line or something on top of it. But that's kind of the way music is made. Yeah, that's how you make music. Yeah. But, sometimes there's a click track, so sometimes I'll listen to the click, and then I can do something kind of weird, and I'm confident that I'll be in time. The problem with starting with something more ambient is that I don't know if I'm going to, there's no reference for the time. So once you start a loop, the primary loop has to be some kind of time. If you're doing something musical that has rhythm to it, and if you're just doing a bunch of ambient shit, then it doesn't really matter.
But there's no space to really mess up if you're making a beat, right?
I mean, you can definitely mess up, but
you have to kind of go with it at some point.
Yes, I mean, you either go with it or you just stop and redo it.
And you'll do that.
Yeah. Well, so if I'm making rhythms. Well, it doesn't really matter. If I'm making rhythms with the keyboard, I'm making rhythms with my voice.
Yeah.
I can keep making those rhythms and just turn off the loop and keep making the rhythm, and then like reset the recording so that I can then record again. So the audience may never know when, someone who does looping or someone who's a musician might see like, oh, I see he kind of fucked up that loop, but he's still going, and then he's just going to try to record it again.
Because it was longer than 5 seconds that you were doing the beat.
Yes, like I was doing it at first. It starts to loop, but then they hear like the loop point is really shitty, and so then I'll turn it off, but then like resume. I'll just immediately start doing the beat when I turn it off, when I turn the loop off, and then get the record ready, recording armed again. But so there's not too much loss there. Or sometimes I'll say like, I'll just turn it off and then start going into something else again, like talking or whatever, and just kind of wipe the slate clean and then come back to it.
But if you're not really rehearsing at all, and if all of, I mean, I don't know if you can technically call it rehearsing, but if I guess all of the performing that you're doing is, in front of an audience, and you still have to make it entertaining, does that limit the amount that you can experiment ultimately?
I mean, it depends on how committed I am to wanting to experiment, and it also depends on the context of the gig. Like if I'm doing like a sit down gig at like, I don't know, like Radio Lab or something like that, or I'm doing an in studio thing, I can get really experimental because I can really just focus on what's happening. Well, I can focus on nuances as opposed to being big and filling the space with my energy. I can actually be very small and
you
delicate.
You don't have to worry about what your body's doing.
No, you can just kind of focus on okay, well, I'm going to make this a really cool loop. I'm going to like put a little reverb on this and pan this to the left a little bit. So, and sometimes in a live performance, I can get to that level. It just depends on my mood. But if it's definitely a gig where people are there to listen, but it's small and kind of intimate, I can definitely do more crazier, weird experimental shit.
And when you're getting new pieces of equipment, are you breaking them in on stage as well?
Yeah, oh, for sure. Yeah. I mean, I started using the OP1, like I got it and I kind of messed around with it on my own with headphones, but I remember just taking it on stage and going, okay, well, I'm just going to try this tonight.
Yeah.
See what happens.
I mean, it's kind of a risk, right? If you've never really, if you don't know the ins and outs of a piece of equipment.
Yeah, it is a risk, but that's kind of what's fun about it.
Yeah.
I know that it's not going to fail. It's definitely going to do what it's designed to do, but does it work with what I do? That's always the question. But so I give things tries, but they have to be rudimentary enough, otherwise, or just basic enough. Otherwise, if they're too complex, then I can't use it.
Yeah.
If something has a base functionality that just works and simple to understand, you can grow into that machine. But if it's complex off the bat, I'm not interested in it.
I mean, it sounds like there's still a lot of room for you to genuinely surprise yourself on stage.
Oh, definitely. Yeah. Sometimes I'll just mess with something. I'll choose a weird patch on the keyboard, or I'll try a different trick to recording, or I'll, or I'll just add a ton of effects on something and like use the next channel as like the ghost of what was just played, or there's definitely things that if I'm on it, if I'm really feeling good and confident on stage, I can actually start to go into some weirder stuff that could be fun for the audience.
There you go. That was Reggie Watts' short but sweet interview. Reggie's a very busy guy, as I'm sure you all know. He's got a musical career, does comedy. He's a co-host of Comedy Bang Bang on IFC, which is a little plug that I need to do at the end of the show in order to justify this interview. Thank you so much, Reggie, for taking some time out to speak with us. In the lead up to that conversation, I had pointed out to my producer that we'd probably see Reggie as he was arriving. He's very easy to pick out from a crowd, but what I did not expect was him to pull up on a foldable bicycle with a boombox playing out the back. So we spoke to Reggie from his apartment. He did a little demo. Really a fantastic guy. Thanks so much to him, and thanks so much to IFC for setting that up. Thanks to Brian, as always, for editing this down. Thanks to Mark and everybody else at Bowling Green for hosting it. Lots of good conversations lined up. Peter Bagg, I was just in Seattle. He spoke to Peter Bagg, cartoonist Leslie Stein. Al Burian went all the way to Berlin for that conversation. Lots of other good stuff lined up. If you liked what you heard, you can rate us on iTunes. If you can send us some feedback, it's riylcast@gmail.com, riylcast.tumblr.com. You can follow us over there. So many different ways to follow us and be in touch. But stay tuned, because we will be back next week with another episode of RIYL.